Back in 1995, I got my first cell phone. We didn't have quote unquote smartphones back then. We had cell phones. I got it because I had a long distance drive to go to work. The job I had, they paid me well. So I was already used to basically driving close to an hour each way from another position I'd had years ago before we even had cell phones. But now I've got this new phone. And the only gripe that I had with it at the time was that I had to, when I'm driving home, I had to get to a certain place, and then it wasn't considered a long distance call at that point. Because back in the day, you couldn't make long distance calls for free unless it was after 9 o'clock. There were a couple of times when I worked until after 9 o'clock. For the most part, nah, Mitchell ain't doing that. So we get to 2000 and we buy a house together, the same house I'm still in right now. And I love this neighborhood. Love the neighborhood. We got a steal of a house on the price and everything, and it was pretty cool. What we realized, however, is that we couldn't talk to each other on the cell phone if one of us was in this house. And that was irritating. Couldn't quite figure that out. And I wasn't the kind of person at that time who would immediately pick up a phone and call the phone company. I didn't even think about it. My ex didn't think about it. So we just basically suffered through it. And then we were able to send texts and we were able to send pictures unless we were in the house. Then we couldn't send pictures, we couldn't receive pictures, we couldn't make any phone calls, we couldn't get anything else. We basically couldn't talk to anybody, any of our friends, because none of them lived in this neighborhood. Now, if we were elsewhere, then we could. And it was ridiculous. So we basically went that direction for, I will say, over 10 years, probably even 12. We just didn't think much about it. It wasn't a big deal at the time. We would be able to take those pictures, then we would share them when we were both at home. So, that's how that went. Then one day, I'm at the grocery store. Grocery store is called Wegmans in our area. It's the major chain. And there was someone who was talking to someone else on her phone. And I was real close to her, and she's talking, and she's, having a good old time, and she hangs up. I say, excuse me, what phone do you have? And she says, oh, well, I have the phone from Verizon. And Verizon was basically taking over Time Warner, and there were some other communication stations in the area. But when I first moved in this town or this area back in 1975, it was all Time Warner. So now it is Verizon. And I said, really? You've got this? You can do everything? Because I'm on Verizon and I don't have a signal. I showed her my signal and I had 1 bar. She says, wow, that's pretty bad. So one day I said to the ex, you know what? Let's go to the Verizon place. And it wasn't close. There's a place that's close now, but back in the day it wasn't close. We had to drive 25 minutes to a Verizon place, and the place was packed, and we're in there. And then we finally, get up to somebody, and, I said, we can't talk to each other if we happen to be in our house or anywhere close. We got a Wegmans, and if one of us is in there, we can't talk to each other. We can't send any other pictures. Other people try to send us pictures. It doesn't work. Nothing happened. So they do some gesticulations, on their computer system. And then they said, we're going to have to give you another number and you need to call somebody because this isn't anything we can fix for you, but someone else may be able to fix it. Okay, fine. So go back home, come back to the house. The next day I called Verizon and I told them the problem I had. And so they did some stuff on the computer and they said, oh, you happen to be in a neighborhood where our records show that you don't have any connection whatsoever, almost nothing. I said, well, that's not really going to help us any, isn't there something you can do? She says, actually, we can. We have something that's called a network extender, and we're going to send that to you for free, and then you'll just have to hook it up to your, your Wi-Fi system, your, internet system in the house, and you should be fine. So I do that. I hooked it up. Bam. we now have everything that everybody else has in the world. We were very happy with it. Had good service, and we could send the pictures, we could receive pictures. Long distance calls on a cell phone are done. Matter of fact, regular phones, they're done because they didn't end at the same time that they did for cell phones, because they were killing it. They didn't have to worry about a lot of things at the time, but now there's a lot more other companies that do the same thing. So, you don't have to worry about those kind of things anymore. So I'm thinking, okay, life is now doing pretty good, doing pretty well. Until under a month ago. At this point, I can say it was 3 weeks ago. All of a sudden, I was having problems with my computer, and I was having problems with the router. So I tried to, do my thing, which is trying to fix things on my own before I got to call someone else. Couldn't do it. So I called Verizon. So they do their thing, and they say, well, yes, we see there's an issue with your router, and, we're going to put some stuff here in the computer, and we think we can fix that. So they did that. And so I look at it, and then the lady says, okay, does everything look right? And I said, well, not really. I said, we have a booster, or I have a booster in the house. But now I'm looking at the smartphone, because now we have smartphones, and I said, and we don't have anything. I don't have anything. I'm at 1 bar, and that doesn't make any sense. So then she looks through everything, and she says, oh, well, it looks like the extender you have, we're discontinuing that. We're getting another one, but we're discontinuing the one that you have. So that's one of the problems that we have to deal with. I said, okay, so what are we going to do? She says, well, we're going to have to send you a new extender. I said, oh, okay. Is that going to cost me anything? She says, no, it's fine. We're going to send it to you. We know your neighborhood still has that issue. I mean, 25 years later, I still got the same issue, but okay, fine. So I get connected to 4 other people before I finally get the 5th person, who's now the guy who's putting everything through. And so he says to me, while he's, doing all this other kind of stuff, he says, you qualify for a brand new Samsung Galaxy S25. I said, really? I never even thought about it. Tell me something about it. So he tells me a few things, which, okay, I didn't know anything he was talking about, because, that's just me. I know computer stuff. I don't know other technology stuff. So he says, so what you would have to do if you want to sign up with it, whatever, is that you would have to fill out something online. You put it through. We will get back to you. And then you have to send us your smartphone. So, wait, why do I have to send you my smartphone? And he says, well, that's just part of the process. I said, okay. I need to think about it a bit, because, I love my phone. This is a Samsung, Galaxy S10 Plus. That's the best smartphone I've ever had. I don't want to really get rid of it, but I also don't want to kind of fall way behind everybody else, if that's really what the issue is. So I said, I need to think about it. He said, okay, you have a month. Figure it out. Okay, fine. 2 days later, I finally get the new extender. I put it together, put it where the other one used to be, and it zoomed up really fast. Took less than 5 minutes, and everything is working again, and I don't have to worry about that issue. But I'm still thinking about the smartphone thing, and I'm wondering, why do they need my smartphone for me to get this other thing? That doesn't make any sense. So I waited, and I called them on July 3rd. The reason I called them, by the way, is because I was sitting here doing some stuff with the computer, which I'm always doing, and all of a sudden the computer went wonky on me. And then my internet connection went away. And my phone, wireless, went away. And I'm like, what the devil? Why is my stuff messing up? So I, once again, start pulling everything apart and trying to change things around, and it wasn't working. So now I got to call Verizon the day before January, 4th. And I got the automated thing, because you can't just call and talk to anyone immediately. You have to let the computer do its thing. And it took about 35 minutes before the computer did its thing, and then it contacted me to some guy. So this guy's, telling me all this stuff, and he keeps saying my name. I'm just one of those people. Stop saying my name. I don't know who you are. Why do you have to say my name every 10 or 15 seconds? I don't get it. He's not American. So maybe that's how they train them, but God, that was irritating. So anyhow, he tells me that what they were doing with the system is they were sending through, updates to all of the modems for all of this area for Verizon. So if you're not on the computer, you're not going to notice it. And if you did, and you just waited maybe, 45 minutes or so, everything would have been updated and things were fine. Made no sense to me, but okay, fine. You could at least send a message. I'm thinking, send me a message ahead of time. Y'all always love sending me messages. So anyway, we get that done. He says, so is there anything else we can do for you? He said, actually, yeah. I got an extender a couple of weeks ago, and I was told that I qualified for a new smartphone, but I had to send my phone. And I've been wondering, why do you need my phone? He doesn't know that answer, so he transfers me to someone else. That was 5 minutes I had to wait for, but that's okay because, I'm a comfortable guy. I'm not overly ecstatic on a lot of things unless it's cake, chocolate cake. So I get this guy on there and say, okay, so here's my issue. It's not really an issue, but I'm trying to figure this out. I got a new extender and I was told that I qualified for this new update to this other phone, but then the guy said that I had to send my smartphone. And I'm just wondering, why do you need my phone? And he said, well, that's what we tell everybody initially. And, most people don't question that. Basically, however, what it is that we're willing to send you a brand new phone and you have to sign up for 3 years for the phone, for the wireless. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay. He says, well, we don't want to give you a new phone and then 6 months later you go and sign up with somebody else. Which I said, in this area, there's almost nobody else. Verizon's the big dog. Y'all took care of everybody else. Most of them are all gone. Yes, there's a couple of small companies, but, I don't understand that. But so really, you're telling me that that's the entire thing, is going for those, the 3 years locked in. He says, yeah, pretty much it. Okay, well. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. By the way, how much would that be? So he gives me a figure. I said, okay, well, thank you. I just needed to know that. It gives me something to think about. So when we hang up, I start thinking about this. I said, well, wait a minute. The amount that he told me that I would have to pay for the wireless for 3 years is what I'm paying right now. There's no difference in price. I don't have cable anymore. I don't have any streaming services or anything like that. So it's the same price, but you want me to lock in for 3 years when I didn't have to lock in for the 3 years on this one. At least I don't remember doing that. Nothing has changed. I usually overpay so that basically maybe, 1 month out of every 5, I end up not having to pay a bill if I'm not in the mood because I've overpaid. But I just thought, well, that was interesting. How come you didn't tell me that up front? So, of course, I've done a little bit of research, and it turns out that my phone is not a bad phone compared to the other phone. Sure, it does a few things that are better, but then it does some things that all these different experts say they don't like, and they rather the S10 Plus. Isn't that interesting? So, I'm telling this story for 2 reasons. One, because I wanted to talk about the extender and all this other kind of thing, that you might have to get if you don't have a bad service. But the other thing, if someone tells you something that you've had to call them and they're giving you service and it doesn't really make sense, think about it a little while. And if that doesn't work, call them and ask them why. Because if they're telling you something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, don't fall for it. Just don't do it. Years ago, I gave up my cable box and the lady tried to say, well, we can switch to this service and this service here, the different packages that they have. And all the packages were way more than I wanted to pay for because I've stopped watching TV. So I said, no, I don't need to do that. And the bill dropped drastically. So I was paying over $300 a month for cable that I wasn't watching. And when they got rid of that, I pay $135 a month, which initially I said, well, okay, that's kind of steep. Then I said, but then I've got 1,000. You know, I got a gig up and a gig down. I'm not going to fuss about that. Always ask questions for things that you're not sure about, things that they don't want to tell you. As a matter of fact, he even mentioned to me, you know, this isn't something that we tell everybody because no one really asks the questions that you've asked us. You know, we don't want to get people confused by it. Anyway, that's my story. Y'all have any problems like this? Has something like this come up where you're being offered something, but then they're telling you something else and it doesn't sit right with you? Let me know. Pick up the phone. Give them a call. Fix it. And I hope you end up with an ending that I have, because I am not, like I said, I'm not doing it. That's just me. My name's Mitch Mitchell. Hope y'all are doing well. You take care.